Hello, good evening, UK Crime Book Club. My name's Chris Curran, and I'm here with Alex Marwood. I'll just introduce myself first, and then tell you a little bit about Alex, and then she can tell you a lot about herself. As I say, my name's Chris Curran, and I also write as Abby Frost. So my most recent book was called The Guest House, and that's been out for a while. So that's available. But I have a new book as Chris Curran coming out at the beginning of December, 2nd of December for the ebook, and 8th of December for the paperback. And the ebook's only 99p at the moment.
Hi, Curran.
And we're here with Alex Marwood, the wonderful Alex Marwood, the multi-award winning Alex Marwood, who won the top American crime writing award for her first crime book, The Wicked Girls. I think she's won several other, probably won awards for all her books. But I think you won a best mystery novel, didn't you?
Yeah, I won the Edgar with The Wicked Girls, which was just amazing. I mean, just such an extraordinary thing to happen. The Edgar is just everybody's dream prize, really.
Yeah.
And then I won a wonderful thing called a McCavity.
That's right. Yeah.
The Killer Next Door.
Yes.
And since then I've had a few short listings, but not a peep of anything. Yeah. Anyway.
The short listings are great, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah, short listings are great, and you know, as my editor says, you know, prizes are very nice, but actually making a living is the important thing.
Yes. And weren't you one of Stephen King's top 10
Yeah, that
every year?
the most extraordinary thing. He has been unbelievably generous, that man. He, yeah, first of all, he stuck The Wicked Girls in his 10 best books I read this year thing, which actually happened. I was my dad died about 6 months after this, and you know, so he was on his way down, and his my stepmother was absolutely gaga, and I was it was Christmas, and I was up. The carer, quite rightly, had gone home for Christmas, so I was up there looking after them. And my father was actually in hospital, so I was sort of shuttling backwards and forwards between my father in hospital and my gaga stepmother, who had got into her head that he was already dead and therefore kept refusing to go down and visit him. And you know, and I was doing this so stoically and keeping an absolutely, you know, and then somebody tweeted me and said congratulations, and I was like, what? And they sent me a link to this Entertainment Weekly list that Stephen King does, and then I burst into tears and cried for about half an hour. It was the most amazing.
Imagine. Oh, it's a dream, isn't it? A dream. So I see at the side here, Donna said hello to us both.
Yes,
So
hi
hello, Donna. And Caroline said you get a really cool
yes,
trophy with
yes.
the
It's in the other room, and
Oh.
yeah. So sadly, I can't reach it up, but it's it's a little. Well, it's about head height bust of Edgar Allan Poe, and he's rather wonderful, and just looks like something you might actually have put on your mantelpiece anyway. And then just at the bottom, there's this thing that says what it really is, and it's fantastic. The McCavity is gorgeous as well. It's just a big slab of etched glass. Um, mm.
Yeah, they're lovely, aren't they? That's great. Well deserved, I'd say. And I hope I've got a feeling. Have you shown us the Island of Lost Girls, by the way,
Oh,
Alex?
no, I haven't. Yes,
So
Donna,
please let's see it.
I will get on to that in a second.
Yeah, that's your latest.
So this is my latest, which came out in July, I think it was, and it comes out in June or July next year in paperback, and comes out in the States in June. And it's The Island of Lost Girls. Most of my books have been predicated sort of around some big thing that happened, you know, some large crime, obviously, you know. So The Wicked Girls was Thompson and Venable's Only Girls, and 20 years later, The Poison Garden was actually the Jonestown Massacre, which I've always
Yeah, of
absolutely
course.
obsessed with. And then The Island of Lost Girls is basically a sort of take on the Epstein Maxwell grooming business.
Yeah.
And but obviously, I mean, I don't, just write an account of what happened, but these things always kick me off and make me start thinking. And I was thinking about the nature of corruption, and how, not just corrupted people can corrupt societies. And so it's based on this little made up island in the middle of the Mediterranean, and which has managed to remain pretty much isolated until the early 80s, when the yacht people start turning up. And then it all goes downhill from there, basically.
Yeah, and what I like is you really actually focus on the people caught in the peripheral sort of,
Yeah.
not fallout, but the
Yes.
nastiness it affects, like Mercedes, the island woman, and Robin, whose daughter gets mixed up in it. Those are the people we and I think it's easier for a normal reader to feel for those people. It's
Yes,
so
absolutely.
horrible, the poor girls.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And in the end, it's not necessary to see what is going on inside the um inside the perpetrator's head. It's
no.
much more important to look at what the effect on everybody else is of what they
Mm,
do, I think. You're very good at that as well, I think.
thank you.
Um I discovered Chris quite recently, because we were going to do a panel together at Hastings, which then got kiboshed by the explosion of inflation and all of and the war and everything. So
Mm.
we decided it would be really fun to just do this anyway. So um I just love her books. I think she's fantastic, and you need to go and buy them all.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, Donna, in the background, that's actually a bed head, amazingly enough. I have hypermobility syndrome, and so I find sitting on chairs at desks really, really hard work. So I tend to work in bed, keep the computer in bed. So yeah, anyway, it's massive, and it weighs about, God, something really terrifying, like 50 kilos. So one day it is going to plummet off the wall, and that will be how I die.
I have to admit, I spotted Donna's question, but I thought I better not ask, because you may not want to
Yeah.
admit it's your red head. It's lovely compared to
It's
my awful
amazing,
red
isn't it, Donna? I got it on Etsy.
Oh,
And it was
right.
a terrifying amount of money, but then it's also going to, be with me for the rest of my life, including probably killing me. Yeah.
No, it's good. It's amazing. That's the first thing I asked you, I think, when I saw you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
what I was thinking would be really fun for us to talk about is, actually, rather than sort of, what are our books in each one and everything, what are we actually writing about?
mm,
What really interests you? Not plot and things, but what really is the nub of the stuff that you're chasing in your work?
mm. Well, I mean, you've talked a little bit about yours, so I'll just do a little bit
Yeah.
on mine. I'd say that I mean, I'm obviously very interested in families. I mean, When the Lights Go Out is based on a group of actors working and living
Yes,
very
it's
perfectly
substitute
together.
family, isn't
But
it?
that was what I intended to do, and they are like a family. But also, I found that the main character, Ava's own family, become really, really important in the book. So it's families, and it's also, I think, with me, the idea that people are constantly trying to negotiate between sort of admitting bad things they've done, which sometimes
Yes.
leads them to do worse things
Yes,
because they don't admit it.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
it's that kind of guilt. Guilt is a tremendous.
Yeah.
thing in my books. That guilt can be corrosive.
Yeah.
That it can
And produce all sorts of bizarre behaviour.
and it can lead to
Sarah
worse
will
things.
answer in a second. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, carry on.
So yes, that, and I suppose the way that a family works in society. So and the way other things impinge. I mean, in my third book, Her Deadly Secret. I keep forgetting the name of my book. Her Deadly Secret. I don't. Bit like your Poison Garden. There was a cult in my book. But I think I would say one of the big differences between our writings, partly as well as the fact that you've been hugely successful at what kind and I haven't, but also it's that the cult in my story was a peripheral and was actually a bit of a red herring, but I did it. The cult is very corrupt, which I mean,
which they are.
Cults I've heard about do seem to be corrupt, and I was obviously influenced by the Jonestown and those famous ones that you hear of. In my cult, people don't actually. There's no suicidal bit, but there's a lot of corruption and the idea that they're using their power to get more power.
Absolutely, which is absolutely power is a fascinating. It's a really fascinating dynamic, power and the pursuit of it. Generally, I think, don't you? But yes, that was some. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and I read so much about it all. I'm quite an obsessive. I become quite obsessive about a subject. Sorry, Caroline. Hi, I'm answering.
Yes, Caroline's question was that cults are fascinating, and do you do a lot of research?
Right. Yes. Sorry, other people can't see the questions. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway. I research a whole load. And I have now. I should have. I know I have it around pretty much all the time, but there is an extraordinary book about cult thinking, which and how cults recruit, and I will try to remember to come back and stick a link to it in, because it's by a guy called Stephen Hassan. And it's called, I think, something like Escaping Cult Thinking or something like that. And it's the most extraordinary piece of psychological writing I think I've ever read. It's absolutely riveting. Reading, seeing how people can be manipulated, but also how they will manipulate themselves once they've got to a certain point.
And manipulate others, which is what happens in the Poison Garden.
In order to protect the ideology that they've glommed onto.
How difficult it is.
Garden, Donna. Sarah, how do you decide on the locations for your books? How about you?
Chris.
Sorry,
Sarah's answers that actually.
Sarah's turn asking the question.
How do we decide on location? Shall I start?
Yeah, why not?
Well, my first 4 books were all mostly based in Hastings, which is where I lived at the time. So I think for me, it has to be somewhere I know very, very well. I know some people can do totally imaginary places and it works, but I have to know the place pretty well, although I will then fictionalize it, quite blatant about that. I don't care about that. So they were all based there. My book, The Guest House, which was the most recent one, which was Abbey Frost, that was going to be different. So I set that in Ireland, which is a place I'm of Irish descent, so that has quite a lot of meaning for me. And I also, that was because I wanted that the particular house that I wanted to be in there seemed to fit with those Anglo-Irish crumbling mansions they have there, and with the dark history that they have. So that was why on that one. With my latest, When the Lights Go Out, it's based on a place I knew very well for a short time, a bit like Ava in the book, and I got to know really well because I lived there. And it is basically based in the Forest of Dean, which is a fantastically
mad place. Yeah,
remote.
I haven't been there since I was very little.
Yeah.
But I just remember it being dark.
Yes, quite scary in
And,
part.
of course, Fred West Country.
Fred West, now I'm giving my age away now, though I was very young. Fred West was there kidnapping when I was there, and I hitchhiked and went on buses, stood by bus stops on lonely roads. I only discovered that very soon after I left, actually. So the Fred and Rosemary West thing is not in the book, but it certainly shadowed my feelings about what was quite a happy time for me.
Yeah.
So that's always been something I wanted to use as a setting, because it's just such an evocative and atmospheric and weird place.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for crime, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. It's interesting. It seems to be somewhere that attracts a lot of crime writers, actually. And I think, well, for obvious reasons, really. For me, I tend basically the real sort of central places I just make, partly because I just get so annoyed by those Amazon reviews that say, well, W.H. Smith in Amersham is on the left hand of the high street, not the right hand side, and she completely destroyed all my faith in anything about it. So I just gave up and decided I was going to make places up. So, I mean, they'll be sort of obviously in real places. I like the West Country a lot. Again, it's strangeness. And so I tend to drift out to the West Country quite a lot. With the Poison Garden, I wanted somewhere that was very isolated and very beautiful, so I went for Snowdonia and the foothills of Cadair Idris, which we used to. My mum lived there for a long time when she was a kid, and so we used to go back there quite a lot. And then the M40 corridor with its anonymity and, so an invented town on the M40 corridor somewhere between, sorry, not M40, M4, somewhere between Hounslow and Bristol, which we beat up and down between Hounslow and Bristol. And then the Island of Lost Girls is completely fabricated. I know where it is, and it's, in the Mediterranean. There's that great big bit of empty water, sort of between Sardinia and Ibiza. Huge empty space, and it's there. However, quite a lot of it comes from Malta, which I love and know very, very well. And I've used the Maltese alphabet for the language. Because that was we talked about it a lot, and we just wanted to make sure that it was really, really clear that this was not a real place. This wasn't a place that belonged to anywhere. So the language is a sort of mishmash of Spanish, French, and Italian. With the odd Maltese swear word that I just because I like playing. That's an Easter egg. That's one of the Easter eggs I planted. My my friends on the Malta sort of thing. My Maltese friends and the friends that I have in common with Malta love the fact that I've got the Maltese word for cunt in that book.
If Sarah Blackburn says she thought it was, she lived there as a baby, Malta.
Oh, right.
So somebody's picked up
Yeah,
I think I
it's
had
not
a faith in it.
it's not Malta, and, although, you know, my Maltese friends certainly say they all recognise the bits of it that are Malta, but I didn't want it to be confined by, but, you know, Malta is having an interesting time of it at the moment because it has sort of sprouted a lot of yacht people up in the
Yeah.
northeast corner, and they are bringing corruption with them, and that definitely was something that I wanted to write about.
Mm.
So no.
I like with that one, with the Island of Lost Girls. I love the sharp contrast between the yacht people and the tradition, and I love the way you don't sugarcoat the tradition.
Absolutely.
That's really dark as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's basically going straight from oppression to corruption in one leap, and it's
Yeah.
that was definitely also an important thing that I wanted to discuss. You know,
Mm.
this idea that all these little fishing villages were so lovely. You know,
Mm. The dark beneath the sunshine
yeah,
is a
exactly.
great crime theme, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, that there's dark underneath all these bright things. So I'm just checking to see if anyone else has done a good question we want to answer. But
Oh,
anyway,
do we put Easter eggs in? Donna, yeah, Donna asked, do we put Easter eggs in our books?
I don't know. Do you?
I put tons, absolutely
All
tons.
right.
Yeah.
Mention one, and I'll see if I'd say if I do
Yeah.
anything like
Well,
that.
for a start, I use a lot of my friends as character names, and I
All right.
always give them very inappropriate. You know, so my drunk friend was once the fitness guru to the stars and things like that. You know? Yeah. And yeah, of course, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but yes, I do. You know, my social media friends and things will spot things and go, "Oh my God, I saw that and I howled," you know. But yeah, it's a fun way of keeping yourself entertained, really.
I think I will try to do it next time. I don't think I'm not aware of doing it, but I think
Yeah.
I will try to next time. It sounds like good fun, and you need that, don't you, when you're writing for ages and ages.
Yeah,
Um, so we both write standalones, don't we?
we do.
And
What
it's
are your
interesting.
What are your thoughts about series versus standalone? I mean, would you ever write a series?
Um, I've never say never, but I haven't wanted to so
No,
far.
no.
My third book had a police character that was, and she was quite popular, and so people have said, you know, do a
Do a
series with
series.
her.
Yeah.
But I mean, people, and I know people on the UK Crime Book Club love series, and
Mm,
there are some fabulous ones about. But at the moment, it hasn't been for me because I've always um, come up when I finished writing one book with an idea.
a completely
I would have to
yeah,
program
invented bit. Yeah,
a police or a detective of some kind into
yeah.
it.
I always just feel like I've tortured all my characters enough, and I've got to leave them
Let
alone.
them be.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, I mean, there's place for both, isn't there? I mean,
Mm,
I read series. I love a good series. Um, although I don't like them to go on for too long, I have to
mm,
say. But I I do love a good series, but I also love a standalone.
yeah,
I think for preference, I always used to read standalones. So I think that's why I came doing that when I started. I think that's probably why. Um,
yes,
and with a series, you've got the thing of do you do a limited series and finish it and make everyone who loves it disappointed, or do you carry on forever, or do you
There's
intersperse?
that awful terror, I think, that you know your series might get dropped without you getting a chance
Yes.
to do the wrap up book, which I've known so many people who've had that happen to them. So they never manage to actually kill off or send off into the sunset their characters. It just sort of ends, and that's really That would be
Yes.
that would kill me. It would slay me. I wouldn't be able to bear that. Yeah.
Or solve a mystery that they've, been.
Yes, that they've been pursuing all the way through. Yeah.
And that's something that I don't think, readers, the general reader, certainly when I was a general reader, understand that how much is not in the choice of the writer always. Things stop and people get disappointed in the series not carrying on, but it may be that
Well,
the powers that be, the publishers, have said,
economic decisions made by publishers. It's not.
Mm,
It's usually not us.
so
So,
that's
yeah, I think I'd always rather stick with standalones just because that would only be one disappointment rather than, yeah, and putting years of work in and then not being able to say farewell, if you see what I mean.
mm. There's also the thing that you get known for one kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have noticed, as I say, that quite a few people. I mean, Sarah Hillary's one, I think, and I think Ellen Griffiths has done it as well. They'll write a standalone as a separate
Yeah.
thing, and I think that must help to keep them
Mm.
revitalized. They'll probably then go back to the series with renewed.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm just, funnily enough, going to Caroline's question, what have been your reads of the year so far? Well, one of my reads is actually Steve Mosby's standalone alter ego, Alex North, his new one, which I've gone completely blank on what its damn name is. It's coming out very soon, I think. Is absolutely superb. And yeah, it's really interesting watching people who do both of them, because they are very different and yet still familiar,
I mean, as far as reads of the year, I could never do one of those lists, I don't think.
No, meaning
Because there are so many things I love and so many
Yeah.
different things I love. And the last book I read is often my favorite until I read the next book, if I'm lucky enough to
Well, I'll
buy
definitely
one.
put in a plug for When the Lights Go Out, which was definitely one of my reads of the year. I really loved it.
Thank you.
Um,
Well, same. I mean, the same. It goes without saying that the Island of Lost Girls was top dollar for me, and it's one of the most recent standalones I've read. I've started reading a series, and I've really enjoyed the first two books. I think two books I've read of it. It's Basim Khan's about the Malabar House. There's a detective, and it's set in the time just after the petition and the independence of
interesting.
India, and it's a woman police officer.
India or Pakistan?
India.
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 Yeah.
Bombay.
Bombay. Yes.
That's in India, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Sure it was India. I'm sure it was. Yeah, so that's a very interesting, and I do like something where you step into something different.
Yeah.
Where you find something different. I mean, I think we both try to put that in our books, so we do something a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Take people to somewhere that is different from normality. I mean, I still think, I mean, I definitely like to do a suburban whodunit. The Killer Next Door is that a bit, except that it's very much sort of, the underclass in the suburbs rather than, just your
Yes,
suburban,
yes.
your suburban
Your housing, your state side of thing. Yeah, yeah.
And otherwise, I mean, what at the moment, I have a real problem reading fiction when I'm starting to get going on a new book, and I have now started getting going on my new book, and so I'm reading a lot about the terrorist groups of the early 1970s, which is just fabulous reading, and I've just
this is going to be good.
yeah, and extraordinary.
Red Brigade and
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
like that.
And, yeah, absolutely. Bard Meinhof and all of that. At the moment, I'm reading a book called The Bard Meinhof Complex, but I've just finished this fantastic book called Days of Rage, which came out in 2015, I think, by a guy called Brian Burrough, which is basically a roundup of all the terrorist groups, or all the main terrorist groups who were functioning in the United States between about 1969 and about 1982. And people have it's amazing how people's memories just sort of wipe this stuff out. But there was actually a bomb a day going off in the United States from about 1970 to about 1974, and people just seem to have completely forgotten this.
It gets overtaken, doesn't
Well,
it, by the new things?
all these sort of breakaway splinter groups that so there's the um sorry, I keep going BLM, BLA, Black Liberation Army, which broke away from the Black Panthers because they thought that they were being too nice about it, and they started
Yeah.
going around basically stabbing policemen who were eating donuts. That was their thing, and then the Weather Underground, the Weathermen, they called themselves various forms of weather, and they magnificently blew up. They this extraordinary thing. They all about half the terrorist groups in America in that time all came out of Berkeley University. So we weren't talking sort of people coming up from below here. These were all well off middle class. The Weather Underground were using a brownstone in Greenwich Village, which even then was mighty pricey real estate, and they blew it up by accident. And
I can see you're going to write a fabulous book about all
it's
this. I
going to
can't
be
wait to
really,
read
really,
it.
really fun. The
Cannot
working
wait.
title is Boomers, which I'm bloody well not letting them change.
Somebody said, "Are you visual writers?" Donna, this is. Do you see the images
Yeah.
and write it down? Is that true for you?
Yes, I do. I do. Yeah, absolutely. And you?
Oh yes, completely. Yes,
Yeah.
visual, but see the images, but then I have to feel what it feels like,
Yeah.
and all the other things, of course, the sounds and everything have to go into it.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not really images as sort of being there, and that's one of the reasons I use familiar places, being there and the overall experience. But yes, I mean the visual is terribly, terribly important.
One thing that I've never thought about this before, but I know an awful lot more about what the minor protags look like than I do the people whose point of view it's actually going on through, because I'm seeing everything through their eyes.
Yeah.
So yeah, all the other people, I know what they look like, but I'm now going to have to go and look at my books and say I've got a feeling that you never actually do get any particular picture of what the main protags look like.
That's probably true of me too.
Yeah,
And
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't think you have very much of the
no,
appearance. But yeah.
no. And I think because sometimes people have asked me, and I've probably asked you as well, if it was filmed, who do you imagine? And I say, well,
No
nobody,
idea.
because
Yeah.
they're
No
them,
idea at
and
all.
you know, it it
Yeah.
it, it isn't them.
Yeah.
They aren't Kate Winslet or whoever. I'm
Yeah,
sure
no,
they.
absolutely. Have you had any audiobooks done?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Do
but I
you
don't listen
find
to
them
them.
completely I can't listen to them. They
No,
bore
nor
me
me.
completely. I mean, they're done really well and everything. It's not
Mm.
anything wrong with but the voices are just so completely not the voices that I had in my head, and it throws me so much that I can do like 2 minutes and that's it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I
Yeah.
do when they do if they put a little sample um,
Yeah.
somewhere, I will just quickly,
Yeah.
no, leave it
No.
alone. Actually, I don't read audio. I don't use. I don't go for audio books anyway. I don't drive a lot. If I did drive a long distance regularly, and when I do, I will listen to audio books. But I prefer to move at my own pace, reading, and to,
Yeah.
as you say, hear the voices in my head that I invent.
Yeah.
Um,
Also,
so
it's being able to flip back and find
yeah.
something that you want to remind yourself of,
Mm.
which audiobooks, yeah, I've never been able to get the hang of how you do that. um Donna, that's really interesting about the aphantasia. I've heard about that. I think it's something like one in. It's actually surprisingly not rare. It's something like 1 in 10 people, and it's fascinating.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I see her question. Oh, how interesting. So it'd be interesting to know if she's listening. You know how that affects her
yes,
reading. That would be very interesting to
absolutely.
know. Um,
Absolutely, I'd love to know more about that. I don't think I've ever actually talked to somebody who's admitted to having it. I think lots of people don't realise that they have it because, in the same way I've got raging ADHD and I didn't find out until I was 57.
yeah, yeah.
Because it's only your head. You're inside your head.
Mm,
You think that that is how the world is, and then
mm.
suddenly something somebody says will trigger a
Yeah.
hang on.
Well, it's all these kinds of things. I mean, I'm not bigging myself up here, so be
Mm,
careful. But with my first book, which was set very completely in Hastings, and I was living in Hastings, had a lot of friends. I am not from there, but I've been there a while,
yeah.
and I have a lot of friends who'd lived there forever. Who'd been born there. That's that kind of place. And when they read the book, they said, "Oh, you're so observant. I didn't even notice that." And I think part of that was because I wasn't I hadn't been there for my whole life,
Yeah,
but also you don't realize how I am obviously more observant than they were.
mm,
They you have different qualities and different
yes,
problems, don't you?
yes,
There are all these gaps that you have that you don't know about, and then
yeah,
other things that you're quite good at that you didn't probably
yeah,
realize.
absolutely, absolutely. And also there's a sort of, a kind of object blindness that lots of us have, where particularly with familiar places, we just, you screen out detail because there's too much else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
uh,
perhaps when you're writing a book, you come back like I did and sort of look at it more closely, even if it's just in your mind.
yeah,
You go, well, I'm going to set it in that. What does it look like? Oh, yeah. But I mean, I have absolutely no sense of direction. I always walk in the wrong direction. If I come out of a
very
shop,
interesting. Yeah.
I walk in the opposite. Oh, I don't know why I always walk in the opposite
In the
direction,
opposite
but I
direction
do.
from where you need to go.
Um,
Yeah, that's
uh,
really, yeah, it's so strange. I have complete face blindness. I have prosopagnosia in the most
all
appalling
right.
appalling way. I was once at Harrogate, and this nice man came up and bussed me fondly on both cheeks, and I knew I knew him, but I couldn't remember how or who he was. But anyway, we were chatting for a couple of minutes, and then somebody was approaching, and it was quite obvious they were going to expect to be introduced, and I was just like, terribly sorry, darling, prosopagnosia. Can you I know you, but just remind me what your name is. And he said, I'm David Shelley, Serena. I'm your publisher.
Not an important person at all. Oh,
Oh, by the way, my real name's Serena, which is why I just said that.
Serena, yeah, let's talk about that if you don't
Oh,
mind.
okay, sure.
Um, you started as a chick lit writer, is it
Yeah,
right
I
to say
suppose. I
that?
mean, my first book came out when Bridget Jones was sitting there at the top of the charts, and absolutely everything written by a woman under 50 was chick lit, basically. So
Mm,
that was where it came out today. We actually started as I was a journalist on the mostly working on the Independent, and I had a column um uh sexing up, as that's a professional phrase. The secretarial page was called the Temp, where I was an anonymous temp going, right. It was a sort of spoofy office anthropology column, and it
mm.
was really nice because I was anonymous, and if I got bored with one set of characteristics, I could just move on to another office, and so it was great. But that started getting fan letters, which in the world of newspapers is unheard of. So I thought about it, and I thought, actually, you know what, I could fardle this up into a 20-something rites of passage, saga, and
Mm.
so I did, and that was how I wrote my first book. Um, yeah.
So I didn't know Alex was Serena Maxby, until I looked her up. And then, interesting story, my sister, who's a great reader of women's fiction, I said, oh, guess, did you know that Alex Marwood is the same person as Serena Maxby? She said, oh, she wrote my favourite ever book.
Oh,
And it was, oh gosh, the one where she finds a body in a house.
all right. So
Spencer.
that'll be Simply Heaven.
Atlas
Simply
Heaven.
Heaven. Yeah,
Say
my
it again. What's it called?
novel. Yeah.
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 And that, I thought, well, I'm going to go and read that one, and I did, and I loved it. So
Oh, you
I
don't.
was a women's fiction reader, but
No.
then you gave up.
You and your sister are pretty much the only people who ever read that.
No, my sister's best friend as well.
Oh, good.
They both said it's the best book we've ever read.
But that's certainly, yeah, I mean, that was definitely while I was writing that book, and at one point the heroine finds herself walled up with the desiccated corpse of her father-in-law's first wife. I think it was the moment when I realised that perhaps my packaging and me were going to have to part ways.
And so you then became Alex.
Yeah, I then wrote one more. I wrote a complicated story, but I had a rather iffy agent who didn't want me to change her name because she might have to do some work. So I wrote a ghost story called Hold My Hand, which was really fun. I wanted to see if I could just do something in another genre, and I was planning to change my name, but she said no, and then it all went tits up, and it was ghastly. And then I became Alex.
And do you like having two names? I mean, do you respond to Alex?
Yes, I do now. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I will now turn in the street if I hear somebody shout the name Alex, you know.
Which I'm sure you do. Well, you won't know who they are, will you? Because you won't recognise
No,
them.
exactly. Yeah. Well, my dad used to walk past me in the street in Oxford when I was a teenager all the time. I mean, you know, teenagers changing hair and everything. I'd do a new haircut and he wouldn't recognise me, you know. So I know where I got that from.
I'm just seeing if Donna's replied to. No, she hasn't. She hasn't replied to us, so we don't know.
Yes.
Her aphasia. No, what's it called?
Aphantasia.
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 Aphasia. That's a
Yeah.
word thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh right. So yes.
No, let's see what other thoughts we had. We did have a little chat.
So when we're talking about what we read when we're writing, and we're also talking about what we read when we're writing.
Yeah.
And you were talking about non-fiction. I'll just add that I tend to read short stories or things like I was saying about the Wasim Khan book, which is set in India in the past. Something that I couldn't write. Something so different to what I
Do you
write.
read much literary fiction?
Yes.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, whatever. I'm very eclectic in my reading.
Yeah.
I pick and mix.
Yeah, I'm
I
certainly, you know, back of a cereal packet. I mean, you know, I need to be reading in some way.
And I'm happy to read literary fiction. I do read it. Like with everything with my reading, I don't continue if I'm not finding it satisfying. I won't say
Me too.
you don't always enjoy. You
Yeah.
find them absolutely gripping, but so
Yeah, if there's
I
one
don't
piece
care.
of advice I would give to anybody who reads, it's you do not owe the author finishing their book. You know, if you're not enjoying it, let it go. You know, they'll never know.
Yeah, that's right. They do. We don't mind. Although
Yeah.
apparently they keep track of it on Kindle now. But
Yeah, they do, absolutely. And
oh,
I even know certainly at one point, which was the least finished book on Kindle, which was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt.
oh,
And
right.
everybody stopped at exactly the same point, which was also interesting.
Now I loved that book. You see, I don't know whether
Yeah,
it's
that's
been
really
popular, but
interesting.
I
Well,
absolutely loved it.
yeah,
And I loved her first one.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, well, The Secret History is just the most
the Secret
amazing book,
History.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the Goldfinch was one that seemed to be Marmite, didn't it? A lot of people
Yeah,
didn't like it, and it was
absolutely.
very dense. But I really liked it. Yes, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah,
And
I don't know what it was that made me just suddenly put it down and never go back, but I remember exactly where it was, and it was exactly where everybody else did, and it was the chapter after the bomb goes off in the art gallery.
all right, so
And
quite
there
soon.
was something about it that sort of, was just so sort of, okay, so that happened, and now we're never going to refer to it again. That just, I just went, no, can't do this anymore, and stopped.
No, I did it. I stuck with it. It's quite a large book and quite
Isn't
dense.
it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, she doesn't write short, does she?
yeah, because I tend to prefer a shorter book. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
write long books,
No.
um, but uh, I was reading somewhere somebody said, here's a writer, and they spent 3 years researching and writing and this book, and then the first review comes up. Read it in a day, great. And that's
Yeah,
how
I
it
mean,
is, isn't it? You know, that's what.
yeah, it's so, yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? I mean, the whole thing with reviews, it is really funny, isn't it? I mean, I think, it's lovely if somebody reads my book in a day, but if they read my book in a day and also say it's rubbish when I've
Yeah.
spent 2 years working on it, it does rather cut to the quick, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does. It does. Donna's asked what we've already talked about yours really. What are
Yeah,
the highlights of your career? So I presume so
yeah.
far, or a couple of highlights.
Go on.
So, well, mine. I suppose the highlight is the first time I've been struggling in the trenches for a long time, as many people do,
Yeah, me
and
too.
tried all sorts of ways, and I've written a couple
Yeah.
of books that I sort of realised were not quite good enough. But then I wrote what was Mindsight.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I'm now really glad that um my juvenilia didn't get published, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you
me
have
too,
to have done it
me too.
to become publishable, certainly,
But the highlight, I suppose, was when after all this trial, I got an email, and it was an editor from HarperCollins saying, "Love your book." Finished it in a day. I think she said that, and loved it, and we want to publish it. And
fantastic.
I was at my laptop, and my husband came into the room, and he said, I said to him, "This woman from HarperCollins says they want to publish my book." And he was so excited, he ran out and
Yeah.
got a bottle of champagne.
Oh,
But I didn't. I'm like, no, there's got to be some trick here. What's going on? So I didn't believe it. But that, of course, the first one has got to be a highlight. And
absolutely.
lots of other things.
Absolutely. And I think the thing I regret, one of the nice things about having been a debut novelist twice, is that the second time around I made sure that I actually stopped and smelled the coffee a bit and appreciated what was going on. I mean, when the 10th came out, I don't know, I was too damn busy, I suppose. I was still working full time, and
Mm.
um yeah, there were, and I didn't take the time to actually enjoy what was happening, and yeah, so that
So
would be also, if for anybody who is not yet published and has ambitions to be, please, when that happens, take time just to sit down and think about how fucking brilliant you are.
because there's so much anxiety, isn't there? And
Yeah,
so much rejection, and
yeah,
then so much anxiety,
yeah.
even when I mean I'm feeling high levels of anxiety at the moment because my books.
I know,
I
it's
mean,
awful.
it is. It's sickening. Everybody
Oh,
goes, "Oh, fabulous! You're having a lovely time. You're going to do a launch. You're going
yeah.
to," and
Are you
you're really,
going on tour?
yeah, and you're really thinking, "Oh, everyone will hate it. No one will
They'll
buy
all
it."
hate it, and
And
I'll never get published again. Yeah,
yeah, and everyone doesn't. Nobody likes me.
yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not you, is it? That's the thing.
Yeah,
If somebody doesn't like your book, it's nothing. You know,
it's not personal.
no. It
Yeah,
feels it though. Sometimes
it
it feels
always
very
feels
personal.
personal because, my God, you've spent all this time with it and making it, and it has come out of you, and it's like somebody saying they don't like you.
Mm,
And you have to, yeah, just learn to get used to that. You're
yeah.
always going to get negative reviews, always.
Yeah, I mean, what I do, I don't know. I do read them. Some people say never read your reviews. I do, because
I do.
sometimes you can pick up little interesting things, even from a negative, or certainly from those ones where people are sort of pretty, enjoyed it, but they've got some reservations, or you see some little point and you think, yeah, I see what you mean there. But I also, if I get a nasty, which sometimes we do, don't we? The ones you think that's unkind, you didn't need to say that. I will look back at people whose books I love and read their reviews. And
That's really helpful. Yeah, reading the 1-star reviews of really lovely books that
yeah,
are wonderful, and that's
yeah,
very cheering. I actually have bought books on the basis of their 1-star reviews, to be honest. If the 1-star reviewers are all obviously not very good at reading, and or just crave it,
well,
I'll buy it. Just
well, sometimes you find that something just is not. It's different. It's too different. Either too different. It might maybe what people have got to expect from that writer, and then just go,
mm,
this is not quite the same, and they're
mm,
trying something different. I think something like that happened with Paula Hawkins' second book, The Burning. Was it The
mm,
Burning Girls? The Burning,
mm,
something to do with burning, which I loved, and so many people did not like.
mm.
And I thought, there you are, it just shows, they wanted the girl on the train again,
Exactly, they
and
want
it
you to
wasn't.
write the same book over and over again, and that's yeah. That if you won't do that, then you're always going to get people being disappointed, and it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
It as long as everybody doesn't hate it.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same thing I feel about the way a lot of people, understandably, in these climates, at these times, complain about the price of books, and I do understand,
Mm,
but I just want to say to people, we'll go to the library,
yeah.
we get something from that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, if you want free books, especially those horrible free sites that steal our books, um,
Absolutely.
that the we won't be able to write anymore. It's as simple as
Yes,
that,
please go to the library if you haven't got enough money to buy books, because
Mm,
we get a little tiny royalty every time you do. And we're not trying to nobody's trying to rip anybody off, but in the end, you know, we make remarkably little as it is from the sale of each book,
mm,
to be honest. God, I've had print runs in my time where I was earning 2.25p a book, you know.
mm.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
it
it isn't. None of us are well paid, even the top writers,
Yeah,
really, apart from the,
absolutely.
J.K. Rowling's, or the
Yeah,
top, top Stephen
absolutely.
King. But they do knock out a lot of books as well.
Yeah,
They work
absolutely.
hard, and so
Absolutely.
you can't criticize.
No, I've
Sorry.
got, yeah, I mean, hey, good for them, I mean, I don't understand how Stephen King manages to be so prolific. It terrifies me,
No, I
Did
know.
actually that I suppose was one of the highlights of my career. Was he did an interview in the Guardian a couple of years ago, and they said, we know you do cooperative books with other writers. Is there anybody else? And he said, yes, Alex Marwood, I guess. And it
Yes.
that was the most amazing thing, but actually I completely panicked, and hid under the duvet for several days. It was far too frightening. I mean, one, he's Stephen King, but two, the guy turns out 2 books a year. And I
I've
turn
got to
out
stop.
two
Got to
years.
stop. That's brilliant. But Caroline's telling us we're nearly done, so
Oh,
we've got to show our books.
right.
But also, let's just quickly answer: are you going to any festivals, literary
Not that I
festivals
know of
next
so
year?
far.
I shall be at Bristol, so I just mentioned that. But
What, Crime
yes, we've
Fest?
got some Bristol Crime Fest.
Brilliant.
Yes, so
Yeah, I think it's possible. I might think about going to Crime Fest. So that's
so
The
we've got,
Island of Lost Girls,
yeah, and it's
out now
fabulous. Please
on
get it.
Kindle, and in paperback next year. And
And
hardback,
my
if you really want a huge fat hardback.
Sorry, say that again. I missed
And
that.
hardback if you really want a huge fat hardback.
Hardbacks are great, aren't they? Hardbacks are great. But
Oh, that's so funny about Stephen King. I'm not in the least bit surprised. I think all writers have imposter syndrome to a degree. Thanks.
I
Sorry, Donna saying that Stephen King has imposter syndrome.
I know, and he says, those books that he's, feels are bad and so on that he's written.
Yeah.
This is mine. This is When the Lights Go
It's
Out.
bloody marvellous.
Thank you. It's 99p. Thank you so much. 99p at the moment on Kindle, so really that is not expensive. Costs you as much to drive to the library. So get it while it's still cheap, or buy the paperback, which would be even better, I think. Yeah, so that's us. We've just got a couple of minutes. So
what are you working on now?
What am I working on now? I'm working on a book that is, I've almost finished it, that is set where I live now, which is a wild, windy beach. But I've put some fabulous.
Oh, so you're not in Hastings anymore? I hadn't realised that.
I now live near Folkestone, in a place called St Mary's Bay, which is a very wild and beautiful beach.
Oh, cool.
Even though it's only in Kent, but it's pretty, So what about you? Yours is the. Sorry?
Oh yeah, mine's Boomers. It's basically about old people and except and the way that people tend to assume that old people are as they always were. So as always, it's on two timelines, and the other timeline is the 1970s terrorist circuit.
Right. So we better say thank you.
Yeah.
Bye. I don't know
Thank
whether.
you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us,
Sarah. Thank
guys.
you, Donna. Thank you for the questions. We really enjoyed answering them.
Caroline, thank you so much for redoubtably hosting us. Thank you.
So bye.
Bye bye.